With new, gentler scented Clorox disinfecting wipes, clean finally smells as good as it feels. On everything from lamps to ceiling fans. Even on your kid's toy shark. Oh, ouch. Clorox disinfecting wipes. Now available in... Ooh, crisp lemon. Find it on Amazon. Clorox. Clean feels good.
Dripping in gold? That's cool. Dripping in Velveeta's supremely creamy golden cheesiness? That's respect. Elevate your drip with Velveeta's range of outrageously delicious dips and dishes. Shells, cheese, melty blocks, and heat and eat queso that go all in on indulgence. Flex on your fam with a creamy, cheesy masterpiece and go all in on what you love with Velveeta. Respect the drip and satisfy your cravings. Bring home the drip with Velveeta.
Welcome to the Spy Masters podcast. I'm your host, Antonia Senior. Our guest this episode is spy fiction writer Thomas Waugh. His new book, Endgame, is the third to feature Daniel Ambler, the best-selling author who's also a reluctant spy. In this outing, Ambler is under orders to seduce an old flame, the fiancée of a recently deceased oligarch. We've got plenty more brilliant episodes coming up, so follow Spy Masters wherever you get your podcasts. And right now, I'll hand you over to me, talking to Thomas Waugh. So Thomas, thank you so much for coming on the Spy Masters podcast. We're completely delighted to have you.
It's my honour, and that's not just the drink talking.
It is slightly the drink talking, I'm sure. Thomas Waugh, top spy novelist. Tell us about your latest book. This is your third outing with Ambler.
That it is, yes. It could be the last, we shall see. But Endgame focuses on our hero, Daniel Ambler, who is approached by MI6 to make contact with an old flame who was the fiancé of a Russian oligarch. So the gist of it is that MI6 are after the money, and they think that the kind of fiancé has it. And Daniel Ambler is sent in as a kind of Romeo spy, which he laughs at himself. But the nub of it is, as a kind of, he's an accidental spy, he's a reluctant spy, but he's actually not a terrible spy. So we follow him on his kind of route to find out, does he have the money? Does she have the money, rather? He does seduce her in some ways. It's not that graphic, unfortunately, readers. But there are a couple of twists and turns, which I would have to have a lot to drink to reveal.
So why does MI6 want to track down this money? What's the broader political context?
Well, partly they think that Putin will get their hands on the money, and the backdrop is obviously the Ukraine war. So, any money that goes into their war chest and not Putin's is a good thing. And they can acquire the money through the kind of, terrorism acts, etc. I mean, basically, the oligarch was not a pleasant person.
Yeah, most oligarchs, I'd assume, are. So tell me a bit more about Ambler. Obviously, as you said, this is his third outing. He's a novelist who... how does it come about that he becomes a reluctant spy?
Well... he's a Russianist to start with, and, years ago he was called in to consult on some things for MI6, so there is this kind of the seed of a relationship, and he actually kind of got caught by the Daily Mail coming out of MI6, and it was a winter, and the headline was The Spy Who Went Into the Cold. But sort of years on, he's basically friends with, people in the spy world, and occasionally he's asked to do a favour. But in terms of Ambler, imagine a kind of Thomas Waugh that's slimmer, more successful, attractive. If somehow Ambler was funnier than me, though, I would kill him off.
Obviously, our dear listeners can't see you now, Thomas Waugh.
Lucky listeners.
But they might have this image of, kind of Gregory Peck type figure.
Wow.
In their heads.
Wow. Well, there is a nod towards Eric Ambler. And his heroes, in a sense, there are things going on that he doesn't quite know about. The plots are bigger than him. and he's accidentally kind of thrown into these worlds, and he's along for the ride in some ways, but he does affect things in other. And that's my sort of nod to Eric Ambler, and a kind of, a sort of spy tradition, if you like.
I think these books are really brilliant for people who are quite immersed in broader spy fiction, because there's always lots of nods, lots of little homages to other writers. So, for example, in the second book, you set most of the action at a Graham Greene conference.
I became obsessed with Graham Greene, I think, for a couple of years, and read and reread his books. And that was my way of getting out my system in some ways. But it is, you say a homage, it may be the fact that there's not an original idea in my head. So I sort of do borrow from, Graham Greene, Le Carre, as a nod towards Eric Ambler as well. And, I kind of fold it in. Actually, we may get on to talk about people like Mick Herron or whatever. But what Mick Herron, I think, has been able to do over the last half a dozen years or so is allow spy novels to be funny again.
Well, I was going to bring up Mick Herron, but let's talk about him now, because obviously you owe some debt to Mick Herron. There is, I would probably counsel anybody who considers themselves to be quite woke or progressive to handle this book with extreme caution. There are there's some sort of quite salty humour and some quite salty takes on things. Let's put it this way: Ambler is not a Corbynite.
No, he is at odds with the modern world. He hates the modern world and considers it Marxist as much as our good friend Roger Morehouse, if that's mathematically impossible. And he's at odds with the world, but it manifests itself through humour, really, rather than out and out anger. He's too much of a sort of coward to be, confrontational. But inside, he kind of sees the satire of things. But also that, in a sense, he sees this kind of Marxist world as a sort of manifestation of communism and the old enemy, Russia. So this is where it sort of ties in the old Cold War with, in a sense, the modern world, which we don't particularly like now. So you mean the kind of cultural Marxism argument? Yeah. It's quite, well, it could be subtly done, but also they're just gags, basically. There are a lot of sort of jokes that, they're meant to offend people who like to be offended, but otherwise they are just gags. It is very funny. There's a particular thing where he goes to his publisher's office and the office space is shared by a dating agency for people with, additional needs. And that was quite that made even me. I'm not shockable. That even offended. That maybe offended me. I did. By the very fact that I showed that to a couple of people and they said, "You can't say that," I left it in. Yeah, that's the limit, though. Okay. Yeah. In which case, it's fine. Everybody will be fine. Nothing to see here. If you are from Liverpool as well, the whole trilogy may not be for you. It's interesting he's a spy novelist as well. I mean, as a writer myself, I found your portrayal of a lot of the publishing world both utterly convincing and very funny and kind of utterly dispiriting. Well, it's an absurd world with people who you think they must be clever, but really they're idiots. And the echo is that, there are people in the intelligence world where you think they must be clever, but really they're idiots. So that's where a kind of echo is. And, publishing as well has always been a front for the intelligence community, particularly in this country. Years ago, my original kind of book in the trilogy, the Duty Calls, is partly sort of inspired by the Russia House. That they approach an author and he gets recruited, and how he's basically in this world. As a writer, he's much respected. He can basically open doors, and that's why there's I kind of gave I made Ambler a writer because A, that's what I know, but B, it is kind of believable that he can sort of straddle certain worlds. He's very happy in a local boozer, but he's happy going to a kind of gentleman's club in London as well.
It was quite interesting, the fact that he's a writer as well, because I've been thinking quite a lot about this, because I was reading in an excellent book about the CIA about how loads of the early CIA officers were encouraged to join because of their love of a particular type of spy fiction. And a friend of mine, Amir Viner, who's written a book about the KGB, finds the same thing, that a lot of the kind of KGB recruits were influenced by Russian media portrayals of spies being adventurous and romantic types. It's very kind of niche in historical inquiry, I think, that you get an area that is where the fiction and the non-fiction kind of inform each other so much and kind of blend into each other and feed each other and give each other impetus, I think. And I get the sense that in your book as well.
I guess so. I mean, the worlds are kind of blurred. I mean, in terms of that historical element, I mean, James Bond and Jason Bourne would have been great recruitment, tools for the kind of CIA and British intelligence as well. And he is aware of kind of, a tradition where, I suspect that there are lots of people who sign up to be part of MI5 and MI6 who, in a sense, have read Le Carré and it's wish fulfillment or projection. And there's, in a sense, there's nothing wrong with it, really, as long as the sort of vow is removed from their eyes at some point. And also, there's lots of, as we know, there's lots of spies that go on to write spy fiction.
Thomas Waugh is a pseudonym. In other guises, you've written other books across genres. So why spy fiction? And is there a reason why you've come to it at this stage in our kind of political cycle?
There's probably more than one reason. I have touched upon, espionage in some of the historical fiction, dealing with, the likes of Marcus Agrippa being a spy master, and also Thomas Chaucer, the son of Geoffrey Chaucer, was a spy, and I used him as a character in a series as well. So it's not kind of totally alien. And also, having read lots of spy fiction, I thought I'd sort of give it a whirl. I mean, the other argument was I'd been on a treadmill writing historical fiction for over a decade, and I wanted to be a bit lazy. I mean, there's, when you're writing historical fiction, it's like wading through treacle doing the research. I mean, a lot of the research for this trilogy involved reading some books on Russian oligarchs, but then it was a lot of just revisiting John le Carré, Graham Greene. So that was a kind of real treat. It doesn't seem like work. And if there's one thing we like to do, it's not to work.
But is that another reason why, so your books sometimes feel a bit curiously old-fashioned, given that they're modern spy novels, because they're very low-tech. This is human intelligence. This is not people sitting in a room doing disinformation over the dark web.
Again, I mean, part of this is just, my books are driven by, character and plot, and there are no kind of poison umbrellas in these books. Partly, there are no umbrellas in these books. They're set during the summer. But also, I think it is partly laziness. You can kind of, there is a rich seam to mine in terms of technology and, in a sense, signals intelligence and sort of some nitty-gritty techno stuff, which there's plenty of authors that already do. As you say, I'm kind of writing from a more old-fashioned tradition. And partly, there is a sort of great tradition and people still write in that. And I just wanted to sort of join that crowd rather than the kind of modern spy thriller with, call it gadgets or, telling something new about the world. Where I don't think there is anything new in the world. I think that, there's nothing new under the sun. And it's about, how can we apply some of the Cold War tradition spy novels to now?
I think some of the gadgety stuff is also quite boring, right? I mean,
yeah.
There's nothing. You've got a kind of beautiful Russian woman, you've got seduction, you've got, minders and physical threat. Like, some guy in front of a computer is just infinitely harder to make interesting.
I mean, I used to go onto YouTube and, investigate, what does that gun sound like or what gun to use. And I think my viewing history was not an enviable sight. So I even sort of stopped doing that. But it's about, story and character for me, to be honest. And laziness. Let's throw that in. Yeah. It's like 4 marks for honesty, no marks for laziness.
So a lot of your the kind of wider political themes of the book revolves around oligarchs and oligarchs in London. You're not afraid of getting in trouble yourself for giving the oligarchs a hard time? My
great cunning plan is for sales to go completely under the radar. I was a little bit worried about that. I mean, basically, Putin, who has several lawyers, if they did cast an eye upon me, perhaps they could take my non-existent pension. But no, I mean, there's been lots of written about recently, actually. There's some excellent kind of non-fiction books. And so I kind of cherry-picked some stuff from there. But also, I mean, again, in terms of the sort of free books, I mean, it's about borrowing kind of, I don't know, tropes and influence from the villains in the likes of the Ian Fleming's James Bond books. I mean, they are sort of grotesque as well as doing a bit of kind of research in terms of how they made their money. I mean, it's all pretty unpleasant. I mean, the backdrop of the free books as well is the Ukraine war. For me, there's a little bit of a seething anger about what Putin did. And therefore, I mean, he put a target on his back for me. I don't think he's going to consider me much of a danger. But I did. That was bad form, at the very least.
Ambler, and I'm guessing Thomas Waugh, are quite committed, sort of non-Marxist capitalists. Is there not something about that kind of oligarchical drive for money and power that you kind of admire?
Well, the characters are quite charming. And I mean, I tried to research their accountants to employ them. But I'm not sure. I mean, they're oligarchs, but it's also tied up with...
The Who's down in Who Newville were making their list, but some didn't know Walmart has the best brands for their gifts.
What about toys? Do they have brands kids have been wanting all year?
Yep, Barbie, Tony's, and Lego. Gifts that will make them all cheer.
Do you mean they have all the brands I adore?
They have Nintendo, Nespresso, Apple, and more.
What about...
So the Who answered questions from friends till they were blue. Each one listened and shouted, from Walmart? Who knew? Shop gifts from top brands for everyone on your list in the Walmart app.
Oh, Hilton stay, oh, Hilton stay. Your beds are soft and cozy. No lumpy couch, no stiff futon, no shower line at crack of dawn. Oh, Hilton stay, oh, Hilton stay.
When you want holiday comfort you can count on, it matters where you stay. Enjoy comfortable rooms and friendly service when you stay with Hilton instead. Save up to 25% this season when you book with Hilton. Hilton for the stay. Terms apply.
They are part of the sort of, it's Russian mafia and it's Russian secret service as well. I mean, they all kind of blend into each other in a sort of unpleasant, triptych. So there was that. But, I mean, ultimately, it's a mechanism, the political backdrop, for a human story, really. The last thing you want is for Thomas Waugh to change the world. Because it will be for the worst.
The female figure at the heart of this story is quite a fascinating character. She's... I don't know if women like her actually exist, I'll be honest. She's incredibly beautiful, she's incredibly clever, and she's incredibly nice.
It's fiction, ladies and gentlemen. Well, I mean, there are two kind of heroines in Endgame, where we have the Russian doll, so to speak, and she's a wonderful character. She basically reads Chekhov, and she's, incredibly pretty. I mean, these are wonderful things. But the other character as well, who's in the whole trilogy, is Ambler's ex-wife, Sarah. And the long arc of the story is about him getting back with his ex-wife, where partly in his mind, in terms of doing these favours for MI6, it's almost to become worthy enough of her. I mean, so Sarah is a kind of staunch Catholic. And again, in a nod to Graham Greene, these are not Catholic thrillers, but, Ambler is a kind of lapsed Catholic.
Right.
So this is where, the sort of bigger story is about Sarah as well as the Russian doll.
Right, because he's a lapsed Catholic who's sinned with adultery and just generally being a bit hopeless as a husband. And so everything is, for him, a kind of attempt at...
It is. It's an old-fashioned story of redemption, and we can leave it to the reader whether he is kind of redeemed. So
Ambler spends a lot of time going around London to places that I find quite recognisable. At some points it gets quite meta. So listeners, at one point Ambler gets invited to go on a podcast called The Spy Masters. Hosted by Antonia Senior, who I think, you rather accurately describe in the novel, but I'll let people come to that themselves. And he is reading books constantly by people that I know that you know, and there's a wonderful description of a part of London around Elephant and Castle, which I know that you know well. And I just thought it was so funny seeing these kind of quite meta, quite tricksy, sort of quite kind of comic interludes in a book that otherwise had a kind of quite strong narrative drive, where you're just kind of playing with a story within a story. And
so there is the idea of me entertaining hopefully as wide a public as possible, which leaves out Russian oligarchs. Then it's me entertaining a kind of a bit of a literary set that we all know. And then some of it, I'm the only one that can get the joke, to be honest. But it was quite interesting. So in the second book, I had a friend of mine and called Patrick Bishop. He's a famous historian, and he read the book kindly and loved it. But then his one criticism was, you mention a lot of writers and your friends and authors, but not me. So in the third book, not only do I mention one of his books, and his books are excellent, but his book is used as a weapon. And I can, do no greater compliment than that. And he was satisfied with that, just about.
Oh, I should think so.
Yeah.
I think in the next book, if you could have somebody, I don't know, bored to death by my podcast.
No. But what I might do is in terms of your spy book, what I can do is, what I did with Patrick Bishop's book, is to use the spine of the book to punch someone in the throat. There can be no greater compliment and honour.
I am looking forward to
You can take that to the bank. It'll be a hardback as well. It'll hurt more.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. We touched briefly on this already, but you are very perceptive and interesting on the publishers and the publishing industry in this book. I often wonder whether the types of writers that you're citing as influences, so, Le Carré and Green, would they be published today? I feel like maybe today's publishers are more interested in sort of blazing narrative, and those books are maybe a bit quiet, it's a bit contemplative, a little bit boundary crossing as well, because, with some of those books, are they spy books or are they literary books? Yeah. What are they?
Well, I mean, in terms of Le Carré, and I mean, I don't think I'm not a naive and sentimental publisher. There are some books that wouldn't necessarily, I would, pay a handsome advance for. But the best of Le Carré, I mean, his original A Call for the Dead, I think could and should be published now. I think it's that good. It not only shows promise, it's basically ticking lots of boxes in terms of a crime novel as well as a spy novel. And also The Spy Who Came In From the Cold is probably the finest spy novel ever written. And there's a lot in his canon that I think, is excellent. I think it's John Mellencamp once said that in 30 years' time, people will listen to Bob Dylan and, shagging and, basically considering him, a kind of a great artist. But John Mellencamp said, hopefully in 30 years' time, someone will be screwing in the back of a car to one of my songs. Now, John Le Carré, in 30 years' time, people will be reading the best of Le Carré and as great literary fiction. And hopefully one or two people will be in the back of a car reading a Thomas Waugh book, getting screwed by life.
Sorry, I'm stuck on that image.
I mean, the best of Green. I mean, Graham Greene's early books as well. They would get a publisher now, but they wouldn't be that. He wouldn't be that championed. He wouldn't get that. He wouldn't be able to live by his pen, if you like. But the best of Greene, absolutely. They're still remaking these books into films. The best of Le Carré will still be read and should be read. Yeah.
But I guess one of the issues might be that if you were a Graham Greene or a Le Carré and you wrote a kind of quiet, intelligent book now that didn't do very well on the first go, and then your second book didn't go very well, then your career would be over, right? I mean, publishing's a lot less.
It is a bit crueler. You don't get given the chances like you used to. I mean, there used to be a lot more sort of competition, and publishing houses and editors used to be able to champion things. Perhaps now it would be more difficult, but far from impossible. I think quality does shine through.
So, in terms of the other spy novelists writing now, who is also going to be read in 30 years' time, whether or not in the backseat of a car?
Well, I think Mick Herron will be, partly because of Gary Oldman and the TV series, but also I just think he's going to have a long and an enviable career. He's rightly got a lot of fans. I mean, he's a bit older, but Alan Judd's books I think are excellent. But how much he'll be sort of put in a canon or whatever, and has read as much as Le Carré is sort of doubtful. I mean, things like the Bourne identity is so much in our consciousness that will just keep churning out books and films, and the same with Ian Fleming, James Bond, which I don't necessarily rate the books, but people I think will return to them because of the films. I mean, they'll edit those James Bond books so much now that there'll be a pamphlet. Yeah. You could read them in, half an afternoon.
One of the ones I went back to recently, I read them when I was an adolescent, and I haven't really read them very much as a grown-up. And I went back, and I mean, it was kind of shocking. I can't, the world has moved on so much since those books are written. It is almost unbelievable. But I suppose in his case, the television James Bond is now not really very much related to the book James Bond.
No, they never were. It's partly the success of the films is that they rarely relate to the books. I mean, in the books as well, James Bond is incredibly stupid. He basically gets duped all the time and just sort of knocked on the back of the head and, sent to the villain's lair. Yeah. He's sort of, he's a bit of a Wally.
Okay, so if the film guys are listening and they're going to make Thomas Waugh into the next Ian Fleming and Ambler into the next James Bond, who should be playing?
Jason Statham plays every one of my heroes.
Really?
Of course he does. Yeah. And he lives not that far away from here. I won't reveal. I mean, I'm a trusted source, but he lives not far away from where this podcast is taking place.
He does. And I was cycling along up a hill the other day, and somebody was trying to overtake me from behind, and I started cycling faster, and Jason Statham cruised past me on an electric bike, which is cheating if you're supposed to be a hard man. And he left me in his wake.
I mean, when I say I hope someone reads one of my books in the back of a car, I hope it's a petrol car that they're doing in 30 years' time.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay, so that's Ambler is Jason Statham. Although, isn't he? I don't know.
Well, I've also, I mean, in terms of sort of Thomas Waugh, he has another series involving the character James Marshall, who's more of a Jack Reacher type character.
Okay.
And he is in some of the Ambler books to provide, in a sense, a bit of action and muscle.
Yeah, I can see Marshall more Jason Statham.
Yeah, but everyone should be James Statham. Or Jeremy Northam. I know he's getting old, but yeah.
Okay, and who plays the beautiful Russian?
You. I'm not sure, but I want to be on the casting, committee.
Couch?
Yeah. Well, they'll be on the couch, of course.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, and what next for Ambler? What's the plan?
I've got to write another James Marshall book, so that becomes a trilogy. Then my answer is I don't know. That's not to be mysterious. That's because I've got a few other things to do. This bottle of port first, and we shall see. But I do like spending time in Ambler's company, which I hope that readers will as well. He's kind of good company, I think. He's got his flaws, but that's why he's good company.
He's
perhaps.
very good company. He's very cynical. He's very funny. There's a brilliant sequence that isn't really related to the wider plot that I can tell, where he's in the dentist.
That's just spending a day with, Daniel Ambler.
Out with Ambler in the dentist, getting cross about, various things.
Lots of things. Yeah. And then he goes to the bar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He does like a bar.
He does like a drink. Yeah.
So if he doesn't come back, I would be very sad to see him not come back. The other character that we haven't really spoken about is, in all the books, there's this... that is the sound of a lemonade can being opened for Thomas Waugh's Port and Lemonade accompaniment to the recording of this podcast. In the books, there is also the character Knight.
Yes.
Who is the MI6 Machiavellian...
no, he's
interesting.
He's kind of amoral. He's got his charms. I wanted to have someone with a bit of kind of menace, but actually, again, he's quite witty and urbane. And there is this thing where we know these people who are out there who are kind of willing to do things that we wouldn't want to do, but we have them there to do it. They're basically live in the shadows. They make decisions that, we wouldn't want to make. And, he's a professional spy where, in a sense, Ambler is this kind of, a charming amateur.
And have you, you've never been tapped on the shoulder?
God, no. No. No is the answer. I have met various spies over the years. So some of them are they're basically civil servants. Yeah. But then some of them, they're ex-military, and they've got a bit about them where I've sort of had a night drinking with them. And it's fun. They are fun people, but I wouldn't necessarily want to spend my life with them, yeah. They basically drink a lot. They've got, they're probably onto their third marriage. They actually kind of, care about sort of Queen and country as well. But they're also kind of sociopathic as well.
Yeah, well, I was going to ask that because he's slightly sociopathic and there is the sense of a kind of higher moral purpose. And I just wonder whether, people like him exist as much in the shadows anymore. We're kind of not the patriotic kind of,
Well, I do think that, the ones that come from the military, I think, are. Yeah. And... as you say, I've met a lot of these people over the years, but they would be a slightly older generation. I couldn't really tell you a lot about the 30-year-olds, thankfully. But I think the older ones do. I met lots of, in a sense, sort of old soldiers and stuff. And, they say to me, they joined the army because, they wanted a rush. They were doing nothing else. They needed to sort of fill a void. But also, they kind of, they do it for sort of Queen and country. And obviously, Ambler's sort of quite rightly very fond of the Queen. Maybe the King less so. She was lovelier. But there is an element where, that's kind of a kind of an ideology, really. Yeah. And it is, sort of pro-Western, if you like. Because, I'd much prefer the Queen to Stalin.
Thomas... It's been an absolute tour de force. I highly encourage everybody to go out and read The Adventures of Ambler. They are very funny, as you can probably tell from listening to Thomas Waugh talk about them. And thank you very much for coming on.
Thank you for having me, yeah. I need to write another spy novel just to come on again.
Oh, you can come on anyway.
But it will be a few years' time when this port becomes a vintage.
Thank you, Thomas.
The holidays mean more travel, more shopping, more time online, and more personal info in more places that could expose you more to identity theft. But LifeLock monitors millions of data points per second. If your identity is stolen, our US-based restoration specialists will fix it guaranteed or your money back. Don't face drained accounts, fraudulent loans, or financial losses alone. Get more holiday fun and less holiday worry with LifeLock. Save up to 40% your first year. Visit LifeLock.com/podcast. Terms apply.